What's up YouTube? My name is Techno, and today we're going to be designing a Supersaw from scratch in Vital, and going through some tips and tricks on how to use them effectively and write better chord progressions with them. Now if you don't already know, Vital is a really good plugin that you can install absolutely free. Vital.audio, the link will be in the description. It's an essential plugin, at least for me. I designed most of my sounds in it, so it's definitely a must-have. So, first off, what is a supersaw? Basically, this. So that's what we're going to be making today. Anyway, let's get designing. So I have a Vital here, and the first thing I'm going to want to do when I open this in order to make a supersaw is going to be to mess with this unison tab right here. So what I would do is I would put this up to somewhere between probably 5 and 16. If you put it on an even number, you get two voices that are not quite in the center. And then if you put it on an odd number, you will get one voice in the center. And that makes a slightly different sound. I like to put my first one on 7. And then you're going to take this second dial right here, the percentage, and put it somewhere between probably about 5 and 20. 20 might be pushing it, but it's not an exact science, so you can experiment with what you want. In fact, if you put it up real high, and then do some pitch modulation, then you get that classic dubstep or EDM kind of dissonant thing. When you hear it, you know what it is. So, there are uses for that, but for a supersaw, we usually like about 5 to 20. I'm going to put this at about 9. Now, next thing we're going to want to do is take this second oscillator and turn it on, and then put the pitch up 12 semitones. That's an octave. So now your first one is low, your second one will be high. And then we're going to do the same thing with the unison there. And then for the detune, I'm going to put it a little bit higher. Maybe make the spread a little bit more even. If you take these little bars right here and drag up and down, you can change the spread of the unison, how close most of them are to the center or to the sides. Alright, that's our second oscillator. Now the next step is optional, but can sound pretty cool. You can use a lot of different samples on this noise oscillator, but I just like to use white noise. So I'm going to take this white noise and probably turn it down a fair amount because we really don't want it to overpower the sound. Turn on the key tracking. That's starting to sound like a supersaw to me. Now before I start with effects, I'm going to do a pretty common trick. I'm going to turn on this filter. Doesn't matter which one, but I just turn on the first one. Turn down the resonance so that it doesn't make a laser noise. Make sure all your oscillators and samples are going into it. Adjust it to wherever you want. And then I'm going to take an LFO, shape it like a sawtooth, and put it at an eighth of a beat. But that's another thing that you can mess around with. Alright, now I can even take a macro and do the same thing, drag it to what I want to modulate. That would be this filter's cutoff. Now when you take this macro and move it up and down, it will make a really cool effect. Alrighty, that's starting to sound pretty good. Now I'm going to go over to the effects tab and add some chorus. I'm going to slow it down, maybe even freeze it. I want some slow movement. I don't want it to be too still. So we'll maybe 32. And I'm going to cut off the low end so that we don't make the low end too wide. Alright, now I'm going to add a little bit of distortion. I would be very careful with distortion, especially on chords. If you turn the drive up with the mix all the way up and nothing else, it will sound really bad. What I like to do is turn the drive up all the way and the mix down to about 10 to 20%. And then a very important part of this, because it'll still sound bad, is filtering it. So I'm going to put a filter on it, and then turn down the resonance, and flip the blend so that it's a high pass instead of a low pass. Alright, sounding pretty good. Now I'm going to add a compressor to it. Just adjust it until it sounds good. I usually like to put the attack down and the release up, then put the mix somewhere down, really anywhere between 0 and 100. Alright, now we have the basic Supersaw done, and you can obviously change all sorts of little things about it. You can go and adjust different things, and you can save them all as different sounds. So you can get 10 different Supersaws out of one initial patch. You just change around some parameters and you get an entirely new sound. Alright, so now we've made the Supersaw, let's go ahead and write a chord progression with it. So the biggest thing I would avoid when writing a chord progression would be boring triads. What I mean by this is basic major and minor chords in their root position. So let's make an example. Now, there's nothing wrong with this chord progression in and of itself. It's a little bit cheesy, but when you phrase it like this, as just some boring triads, it really just doesn't have any spice to it. It doesn't have any life to it. Thing to avoid number 2. And we have an example of it right here as well, and that is block chords. Chords with no rhythm to them. They are just this chord, then the next chord, then the next chord, then the next chord. You don't have any sort of, like, nothing like that, no rhythm or anything. It's just like this. Block chords can be super helpful to just get a chord progression down, just so that you can hear it and know what it is, and just say, whatever, it's fine for now and I'll fix it later. But it's not always a great idea to just have block chords in your song, especially not block chords of basic triads. So here's what I would recommend. I would recommend writing chord progressions based off of a bass line. So you want to take, let's say, that last chord progression. We have this here, this here, this here, this here. These are all in root position. They're all basic triads. So you can just take that. So that's our bass line. Those are the root position of each of our chords. So it's still pretty boring, but it's a lot better to have that bass line under it, and just make sure that you're keeping in mind what the bass line of your song is. It's very fundamental to the whole aspect of the mix and the song itself. Now, some easy fixes to these things like the boring triads, for example, or just to revoice your chords. Basically what that means is to just make the chord to where it doesn't start on the root position. Change some of the notes up, essentially. So like shift all your root notes up an octave. Right. I'm going to go ahead and double the length of this because it does feel a little long. You can even do that a second time and have a second inversion of your chord. Alright, so now we have a basic chord progression. You could even add another note on top if you want to. Now we're still suffering from the second problem, which is that we didn't have any rhythm. We still have these block chords. Now, a really easy way you can go about fixing this is you can just take block chords, shorten them, and then copy them, and then paste them in. And now your whole chord progression is pasted in, and you can make whatever rhythm you like. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? I'm so good at making music. I am a professional. I am a teacher. Alright, so now I'm gonna just make a little somewhat of a drop out of this, or try to at least. I don't know if I really fucking like this chord progression. I mean, it sounds better than it did before, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's a 1, 6, 4, 5 in C major. What are we doing? We gotta fix this. We have to. Alright, now let's add some rhythm to these. Alright. That's a little bit better. Alright, and then another cool little trick I like to use is to cut out the chords and sometimes other elements of the song when the snare hits. Now, obviously, this isn't a full song, but that's not really what I'm here to do today. I think I've pretty much demonstrated how to make a supersaw, and hopefully I've given a couple helpful tips. If so, if not, let me know in the comments, and have a good day.